Let me sort of respond to the challenge raised by Diana some time ago. Let's look at things, and I'd like to add a third, perhaps begin with it. Some months ago, Kim on one evening caught me on the way out at 11 o'clock and said, "Do you still look at economics the way you used to?" And my quick and dirty answer was yes. But Kimon gave me an opportunity to think about it, for which I thank you. The other provocation, so to speak, was an article in The Economist, which you all had as part of today's homework, in effect saying that what has happened had dealt a blow to the economics profession. And the third provocation was an article by David Brooks, who's a columnist for the New York Times, maybe about 10 days ago, where he had a kind of inside story that in the midst of the misery, the key decision makers in Washington, quite frankly, didn't know what they were doing. So I thought under these three particular impacts, it's perhaps worthwhile to go back to basics and just see how we can explain all this. Now, I realize that in this room there are creative artists, students, physicians, and economists. So I will ask for pardon from the latter, but I do want to make an effort at making sure that everybody gets back down to the basics here. The fundamental fact I want to start out with refers to money markets or interest rates. And there's a fact of life which simply says that short-term interest rates are lower than long-term interest rates. Now, short-term interest rates refer to the period of the loan, so the shortest of short-term interest rates refers to an overnight loan, and the long end of this process is somewhere at 30 years. So generally speaking, there have been exceptions. Short-term interest rates are lower than long-term interest rates. Thus, for anybody who has the natural tendency to truck, trade, and barter, that's an Adam Smith expression, it's tempting to borrow short and lend long. Now that very simple idea explains banks as we know them.
As we know them.
Borrow short, pay low interest rates, and lend long. Now, those of us who have gray hair, none of the ladies do, but some of us chaps do, will remember a time when in Canada we had a banking system which we refer to as a 3-6-3 system. Now, the 3-6-3 system meant that the little old ladies and the young couples who took their money to the bank and deposited it there received about 3% interest. The banker who lent it out at 6%, and at 3 o'clock he went to play golf. That was a 3-6-3 system. It wasn't terribly exciting, nor was the 3% margin that great, but please remember that this was earned on somebody else's money. Any return on somebody else's money is usually a pretty good deal. Now, let me go back to how exactly the system operated. Obviously, all of the money that the little old ladies and the young couples took to the bank couldn't be lent out. Bankers kept reserves. They still do, depending on circumstances, anywhere from 4% to 10%. The government also expected bankers to have a certain amount of capital, although the Bank Act, within a time I remembered, required a bank only to have $1 million to start. You couldn't do this, but that effectively did not prescribe the amount of capital a bank had to have, and in fact any regulations on capital came in the 80s and thereafter.